What's up, Enlightenment family? House here. Today we're going to discuss the true meaning of the word freedmen and who exactly they were. Who exactly were the freedmen? When slavery ended in the 5 tribes after the Civil War, the formerly enslaved people became known as freedmen. I want you to pay real close attention to the wordplay. They became known as freedmen. Not that they were freedmen, they became known, which means there was a change that occurred. They were not the freedmen that we think of today. The original term was applied to Indians, but they became known. Pay attention to the wordplay. Always. They spoke tribal languages, ate tribal food, and lived in the manner of the tribes of their former owners. It's more likely that these so-called owners of the slaves were in fact their family. And it clearly states it here. Owners. Family. Does it make more sense that the so-called owners of these people were in fact their family? The formerly enslaved people became known as freedmen. They spoke tribal languages, ate tribal food, and lived in the manner of the tribes of their former owners. By any cultural metric, they were Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Muskogee, and Seminole people. It seems they want you to believe so badly that the Aboriginal indigenous Niji, the Indians that inhabited this continent, the dark-skinned Aboriginal Indians, enslaved other dark-skinned people. Would it be more likely that they would enslave white Europeans transported through transportation? Would it be more likely that they transported white Europeans to the United States through transportation and they became peons for the Euro, slaves, in fact, and then the narrative was switched on to you? I mean the main narrative. You know, transatlantic slave trade, we came off the selling block, and now Indians are purchasing us from Africa. And the Europeans are orchestrating all of this enslavement. And they never were slaves, when in fact, we all know they were. Enslaved through transportation. And instead of getting hung or doing life 20 years, you were given the option of transportation instead. And transportation was them shipping you from Britain to America. And that lets you know how perilous that trip was. They want you to believe that formerly enslaved people became known as freedmen. But if they were enslaved by the indigenous people that were already here, and we see and we know that this continent and many others were majority populated by dark-skinned people, the only way they could separate enslaved people from Indians is to change the identity of the people, the Indian and the so-called slave, which would now be called a Negro, a Black, a African American. That's what the new category for Indians, the Niji, became. So They took your land rights by making you declare that you were black, Negro, and all these other categories instead of Indian or Neji. And so now they can say you were enslaved by your own people. The Neji, the Native Americans enslaved formerly enslaved people, which makes no damn sense whatsoever. It was a very slick ploy, very well executed, and man, it's so twisted up now to people can't believe the truth. They can't believe that freedmen are actually Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole people. Those were the freedmen, not formerly enslaved people. And if they were enslaved by way of transportation. And they could very well have been Caucasian, European, white people. And they also became members of tribes, but they had the Native American tag slapped on them because of skin color. See, you have to see the ploy. You have to see the plot that was executed against you. Very intricate. But you can sift through it to find the truth. That's something to think about.